In this video, I'll show you how to install the latest version of Conveyor or update Conveyor to either versions 4.1 for compatibility with Rhino 7 or 4.2 for compatibility with Rhino 8. On the screen here, you'll see that we have an installation guide on our documentation site. You can find that at apps.provingground.io/docs under Conveyor. And as you scroll down here, you'll see that we provide installation instructions. In this video, we'll go through these steps, and I'll provide some additional explanations for why things need to be done the way that they're being described in these instructions. So the first step in installing or updating Conveyor will be to download the correct installer. As you go through the checkout process on our website, either for the purchased and licensed version of Conveyor or for the free trial, you'll notice in your available products list that there are two different versions of the installer. There's one that's compatible with Rhino 7 and another that's compatible with Rhino 8. Because of differences in Rhino between version Rhino 7 and 8, Conveyor versions 4.1 and 4.2 are not able to be installed at the same time on your machine. So you will need to make a choice based on your workflow and your preferences of which version of Rhino you're going to use primarily when you're working with Conveyor. For this video, I'll show you the process with Rhino 8, so we'll download that. It's important to note that if you previously had Conveyor installed that was working with Rhino 7, downloading and installing this Rhino 8 compatible version will wipe out that previous version of Conveyor. Before you run the installer, it's important to verify that the contents have not been blocked by your system. So you'll want to right-click on the installer name, go to Properties, select Unblock, and hit Apply, and then hit OK. Now you can double-click and run the installer. This opens the end user license agreement, which you can review and accept. And then you can make selections about which versions of Revit you want the app to install to, as well as which versions of Rhino. Again, like I said, this will wipe out any version of Conveyor that you've used in Rhino 7 before, and it is not compatible with Rhino 7 if you selected this version 4.2 for Rhino 8 option. If you're installing the full licensed version of the app, you'll select this install button where you'll be prompted to enter a license key if you don't already have a Conveyor version 4 license key associated with your user account on this machine. And if you are installing the trial, you'll select this button here to install the trial, and you will not be prompted to enter your license key. And we've received a message that there's a success. If you don't get this message and you receive an error message, please check out our troubleshooting tips on our documentation website. And if you can't find a solution there, please email us at apps@provingground.io. I'll hit OK. Now it's important for us to open Rhino in a session of .NET Framework. So to do this, and I have one created here, but I'll show you exactly how it's done. You'll want to copy one of your shortcuts to Rhino 8 and create a new one. And then right-click on the shortcut and go to its properties. And at the end of this target field, type in /netfx. Rhino version 8, by default, runs in .NET Core, and McNeil has enabled Rhino 8 to be run in .NET Framework so that it can be compatible with legacy plugins like Conveyor, but among many others. For Conveyor specifically, it's important that it is being run in .NET Framework because that is required for it to be compatible with Revit as we interface between the programs. It's also important to know that when you start a session of Conveyor from inside Revit, using Rhino inside Revit, that session automatically starts in .NET Framework. So from here, we will open up that session of Rhino 8 in the .NET Framework version of your shortcut here. And we'll just open a new session. And this is a good sign. It's asking if we want to load the Conveyor plugin. And from here, we can type in Conveyor v4 and select the appropriate units to instantiate Conveyor, and then select on our Layers tab here to ensure that all of the layers for Conveyor have been created. So that's a great sign. It was successful in Rhino. The next step to verify its installation will be to open up a version of Revit, one of the versions that was selected during the installation process. And then we'll start a new project so that we can check and see if everything is installed correctly. And we'll navigate to the Proving Ground tab, where we can see that we have version 4.2 installed. So from here, you could either use the Conveyor importer to test and import different families from a saved Rhino file that's already been categorized for Conveyor, or you could start a session of Rhino inside Revit and send geometry through that way.